Hurricane Wisdom is quickly becoming one of the rising stars in hip-hop, and a lot of his success is due to his unique, bouncy production. He has a variety of different sounds, but in this video, I'm going to be focusing on how to get his darker sound, similar to songs like Clippers and Drugs Callin'. Well, what's going on, y'all? It's Aquila Beats, but you can just call me Ak, and let's just get into it. So first, I always like starting off with the Rose, so I'm coming into contact getting the Scarby Mark 1. I like using this old school preset if you have this plugin, but one thing you can always do is just do a 1 to 5 chord progression, which sounds like this. This has a pretty dark sound, but I want it to be a little bit darker, so I'm going to do inversions and also add sus chords. So you can see here, this does not look like a 1 to 5 chord progression, but if you do the inversions, you can see that this is really just an E minor chord. Then this is also just a B minor chord, but I'm adding in some suspended notes. So all I was doing was I was really just playing around with the E minor chord, but I wanted to make it darker, and a great way to do that is do sus chords. So that's either adding a note below or a note above in the chord. So we have the E minor, adding either an F sharp or an A. So in general, I prefer doing sus2s, which are the lower notes, because they're just a little bit more evil because they have a half step interval between them versus the G and A have an entire whole step between them. So I just did that. But then for the next B minor chord, I didn't want to be as evil, so I just did a sus4 chord where I'm adding an E into the chord. So I could have done a sus2 B minor chord like this, but I chose for the sus4 because I think it just sounds a little better. So like I said, if you're trying to make these dark chords, just come here, make a simple minor chord, then go either a half step below or a whole step above the third, and you'll be able to get these suspended chords. But then all I did was invert them, so I really just had this E minor chord out here, took the G, pitched it down an octave, and then I also took the B and I pitched it down an entire octave. Then for the effects, I'm just doing some EQs. I'm taking away a little bit of the low mids and the bass and adding some highs and some mids into it. Then I'm adding a chorus just to widen it out. Almost sounds a little bit like a Travis Scott kind of chorus. Adding a little bit of reverb, and then finally a final EQ to get rid of the bass and a little bit of the low mids. Then I'm going to my Omnisphere bank. I have a bunch of those linked below, and I'm really just hitting the third on each one of the Rhodes hits. So I have the Rhodes hitting on the 1 and the 3. If you come back in here, you can see that I have it on the 1 and the 3. And the third in each one of these chords is going to be the G and the D. Because if you think about it, you got an E minor up here. The third is going to be the note in between, which is that G. Then same thing for a B minor. The third is going to be that D note. But if you come over here, I got the G right here, which is hitting on the E minor, then the D right here on the B minor. If you just hit the thirds with these higher synths, it'll almost always sound good. And I'm really just adding this in to add some ambience, because with these beats, you want to leave a lot of room, but you still need to find some things that fill it out. So getting some really ambient, really high synths can really help out. But then one thing with Hurricane Wisdom beats is they have a lot of West Coast influence. So I'm getting some accents from Probably Infinite. Y'all probably know him, but he does a bunch of West Coast stuff. So I'm really just adding those in to add a little bit of filler and make it sound a little bit more West Coast. But then, like I said, we're not doing too much with the overall sample, so I'm just adding a filler background pad. It's really just playing the chords from the Rhodes. And of course, one of my sounds in the Omnisphere banks. Then I'm getting a ukulele sound, and it's really just playing the E minor chord. You can see the E, G, F sharp, B. So it's just that E minor sus2, and same thing with the B minor sus4, B, E, G, F sharp. I like adding these slight, kind of more acoustic real instruments, because a lot of Hurricane Wisdom beats are using real instrumentation. Again, all these sounds in my Omnisphere banks, linked below, actkits.com. Bunch of free stuff on there if you want to grab it too. But now the most important part is definitely the drums. So there are two most important things. First is the snare, and second is the 808. So we're going to start with the snare, and I really just think of it kind of like a drill snare. So first, you have to get this classic Luger snare. I swear uses it in almost every single beat. But if you're just doing regular trap drums, you're going to put the snare here, 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 and then finally on this last spot. But with these Hurricane Wisdom beats, he's not doing that. What he does, instead of having it emphasize these beats right here, is actually dragging them off basically an entire beat and emphasizing that beat instead. This is the #1 key to actually getting those Hurricane Wisdom type beats. Just do that in your next Hurricane beat and I swear it's going to be crazy. Then you always have to have this little 3 knock, the bum, bum, bum. So I'm getting a lot of inspiration here from Clippers doing the bum 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 right here at the end. Really with these beats, you're not throwing 808s all over the place. You're picking your pockets and really making them knock. Then for more of like a little West Coast technique, he's making sure the open hats are hitting on all of the 808s. See here, I'll copy these, bring it over to the 808. You can see they're hitting on basically every single 808. This will really just help emphasize those and make them sound a little bit brighter and just knock a little harder. But then you also gotta have some, really unique sound effects. We can add some lasers in here. And then also a cowbell, my least favorite drum of all time, but they sound fire on these beats. A big part of this bounce is really just putting drums in places you've never really thought about putting them before. That's why I really love these beats, is because they're just so unique with the overall drum bounce, but they're still very familiar because the samples aren't anything too crazy. Again, it's all about leaving space for the artist and making sure there's a lot of room and not doing too much. Then, I pitched down the beat, got the vocals from Clippers. This is what he would overall sound like on the beat. Church house filled with sinners. Make my safe house filled with Clippers. They got it on me in LA. I'm dropping 2 violins. Nah, fuck, I'm dropping 50 like on Yanni. I had to pitch it down because I don't want to get copyrighted, but you can hear the overall bounce is very similar to a lot of his other songs. I hope this really helps y'all out. Again, if you want any of these sounds, I have them in a Pay Multi-Kit and also Omnisphere Banks. Go check those below. Got a bunch of free ones. But I appreciate y'all for watching. If you want to check out my other Hurricane Wisdom videos, I have one linked right here.